The last bastion of Celtic culture of the time was Britannia, who, with the help of Germanic mercenaries, managed to lose the interest of Rome, who withdrew. These same Germanic mercenaries also helped the Romanised Britons against the still Celtic Picts in the north, who were constantly raiding. However, upon seeing this green and pleasant land, the Germanic mercenaries decided not to just take their money and leave, but to take the place of the Romans. The Germans called this land Albany, an Anglicanised version of the word Albion, most likely in reference to the White Cliffs of Dover. Great Britain is still sometimes referred to as Albion or Albany to this date. Many of the native Britons had grown used to Roman life, but with the withdrawal of the empire, this life became much harder to obtain. Imagine now, if the electricity was cut off, you had no heating and you needed to learn to hunt again. Many of the Britons were struggling to adapt to pre-empire life. Much of the towns and temples built by the Romans were now abandoned or became refuge for the homeless. And from the decay of Roman civilization, older Celtic traditions saw a revival. The rural areas of Albion were not as Romanised, with Britain Hill Fort standing even during Roman rule, and now they had outlasted it. They gained many refugees from the now unfunctionable Roman settlements. The adaptation to pre-empire life would have been harder for those living in South Albany, as this is where Roman rule was most potent, although Roman life may still have flourished in smaller communities. Celtic and British gods also saw a revival and were worshipped alongside the Latin gods, although Christianity was still dominant with the added mix of some druidry rituals. Albany was now broken up again into many Briton tribes, allowing for the Germanic tribes to invade on a more equal footing. The Germanic tribes in Scandinavia were maritime societies, with much of their survival and exploration depending on the sea, rivers and access to clean water. This drive them into building boats, the most sophisticated in the world for the time, and were therefore able to reach Albion with relative ease. The still pagan Picts and Scots also caused much chaos, raiding and pillaging of what once was protected by Rome. The Germanic mercenaries and now invaders were called the Anglo-Saxons, an amalgamation of Germanic tribes from the North German coastline and possibly into Scandinavia. They consisted mostly of the Jutes, Angles and Saxons. They are the sons of Angle and Saxonate. They wouldn't have called themselves the Anglo-Saxons at the time of invasion, although it was used shortly after and was possibly invented by King Alfred the Great, who called himself King of the Anglo-Saxons, and therefore it could be considered a contemporary term. The Anglo-Saxons spoke a North Germanic language and followed Germanic paganism that was more similar to the Scandinavian tribes. As their religion was influenced even further by the Celts in Albany, we now refer to it as Anglo-Saxon paganism. They were known to be a tactful warrior and seafaring people. They once gained their wealth from mercenary work and sea raiding, but were now entranced by the Albion opportunity. The first Anglo-Saxon kingdom was Kent, after they betrayed and overthrew their Briton employers and took the land for themselves. After this success, and hearing of the fertile and strategic land in Albion, more and more Germans decided to invade. Many of the Britons were displaced and fled mostly into what we call today Cornwall, Wales, and into Scotland, while others simply accepted the Anglo-Saxons as their new overlords, taking over from the Romans. It's at this point where some of the displaced Britons decided to flee their homeland to the continent, settling in what we call today Brittany, named after the Britons. It's the Anglo-Saxon conquest of Albion that highly influenced the tales of King Arthur. I'll be exploring the full Arthurian legends in a later video. The Anglo-Saxons would settle many kingdoms, referred now to as the land of the Angles. This over time changed to Angland, and even further over time into England. It is the first Germanic Anglo-Saxons who were the first generation of Englishmen in the British Isles, and who the English people can track their heritage from. But the Anglo-Saxons didn't wipe out the Britons or Celtic culture fully. Instead, the two people and cultures would merge together over time, creating a new culture and race. The Anglo-Saxons would dominate what we now call England, and still rule to this day. The Germanic tribes in Scandinavia, however, would not stop coming, thereafter becoming known as the Vikings, who we'll be exploring in a later video.
Be sure to check out my other channel, History Sticks, for the complete, longer and comprehensive video.